Okay, for the next part of the project, we're going to drop the rear subframe, so the rear cradle that holds the differential and the transmission, along with the torque tube that runs up to the bell housing at the back of the motor. To do that, there's quite a few things that have to be disconnected. So back here in the back, you'll have to take out the bolts for the upper control arms. You have to take out the top shock mounts, the bolts for that. We'll take the brake caliper off, and we'll hang that off the body. Let's see what else. We'll also have to disconnect, if I can shine some light so you can see it, the ABS sensors. That will have to be disconnected. We'll disconnect the parking brake cable. That will stay in the car. We'll have to take it loose from these little connectors that hold it, the wiring together. We'll once we have the control arms out and the shock disconnected, we'll be able to pull on this spindle and pull the, you can see it, the CV axle, the half shaft out. If we get that out of the way, we can kind of set it to the side, and the hard brake lines can stay in the car. So that's the goal. The hard brake lines, probably not going to be able to see it from here, but they're clipped into the cradle in there, so they'll have to be popped out of the clips. Of course, at this point, I've already got the exhaust disconnected, so you can see the mid pipe's already gone. So if you haven't done that already, you need to do that as well. This is part of the process. Even if you weren't pulling the motor out like I am, you would do this if you were changing the clutch. Probably be the easiest way to get to the clutch as well, which I'll also do when I have the motor out. So it'll be all part of this process. And then, of course, a common issue with the Corvettes, as you can see, the kind of hard to see here. The axle shaft seals have a tendency to leak as well. So while I have it all out, I'll probably replace those seals as well. At least that's what I'm thinking at the moment. So that might be a part of this project too. So that's what we're up against. There'll be various electrical connectors that have to be disconnected as well. But that's what we're going to start doing. Okay, I'll share with you a little bit of progress that I've made. And I apologize I didn't show you as I was doing it. I wasn't quite sure exactly how I was going to take this apart. So obviously I disconnected the ABS sensor. That's pretty straightforward. This parking brake cable, I couldn't get enough slack in the line to unhook this bottom piece. There's a lever on the bottom of the parking brake, but I couldn't get enough slack to get that off. So I ended up taking out the bolts that hold the whole bracket on. However, the lower bolt, you can't get that bolt out without taking off the lower shock bolt, which is okay. I had to take off, the shocks have to come off anyway. I was planning just to disconnect them at the top, and that's really all you have to do. But if you think you might replace the shocks, I'm considering replacing the shocks while I have this apart, because I'm also going back in with my Z06 leaf springs. So anyway, the lower shock bolt is a, I think this was a 15/16 nut and bolt. You have to get it from both sides. Once you get that out, you can move the shock enough to get the bottom bolt for this out, and then that gives you enough slack to unhook it. So a lot of work for what should be relatively simple. I will go ahead and take these two top bolts out, and I'll just take the whole shock out. The other thing I did, I don't know if you can see this, so I have my floor jack here. I put some upward pressure on the bottom of the lower control arm. Not enough to like lift the vehicle, but enough to take some of the weight off this lower control arm, because right now the suspension's at full droop, so that puts a little bit of tension on things like the shocks. And then we're also going to come in, sorry, the lighting's not very good, here we go, those upper control arm bolts, taking off some of the weight off of those will make those come out a little bit easier as well. So we're making progress. I still need to take the brake caliper off, but that's pretty straightforward. But yeah, we're making progress. Alright, we'll see if the camera stays in place while I try to take out these upper shock bolts. Alright, there we go. The two upper shock bolts are out. Let's see, yeah. And got the whole shock out. So, not too bad on that. And then next I'll move on to the two upper control arm bolts. Before I take out the two upper control arm bolts, I really should go ahead and take off this brake caliper while I still have some leverage. Alright, there we go. Simple enough on the brake caliper. Okay, I apologize, my camera battery died while I was taking off the upper control arm bolts. But all of this is out now, so these are disconnected, got the shock out. If you can see, not the greatest, but you can see I've got the CV axle pulled out. There's an electrical connector right there, so that's disconnected. Here on the cradle, there's a clip that holds the wiring harness, so that's got to come out. Let's see if we can get you an angle that you can see in there. So if you see all the way in, there's a clip right there that has to be disconnected. And if you see the bare spot on the hard brake line, there was a plastic clip that holds that to the cradle as well, so you got to disconnect that. There's probably some more that I haven't seen yet, but so far so good. Honestly, the rear suspension comes apart without too many problems. Pretty straightforward. Okay, I'm on the driver's side at the moment, but I imagine there's a similar clip on the passenger side as well. So I've shown you most of the clips that you got to get to, right? You get these, that sort of thing. But on the inside of this rail, right, so if you follow the hard line, it dives down just on the other side of the CV axle here. Let's see if I can. Yeah, you see right there, there's a black clip. I don't know that I can touch it with my hand from here, but that clip right there, you've got to get the brake line out from under it, which is a tricky one to get to. It's also not easily seen, so just a heads up, you'll have to get to that. And I'm sure there's one on the passenger side as well, so just a heads up.